not against drilling. There's a lot of degrees of drilling where you could kind of like incorporate people's reactions. Like this is one thing that a lot of people who apply the, nonlinear pedagogy in jiu-jitsu, in my opinion, somewhat miss is, we are a relatively new sport. We are we have a very like market-driven approach to teaching, but the examples are almost always like, well, look at wrestling. But wrestling, people drill.
Welcome back to the BJJ Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Ford. My guest today is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu since 2007. He's a multiple-time U.S. Open champion and a Copa Pacifica champion. He's also a Gracie Open champion, a 2005 Pan Am silver medalist. He's also a World's bronze medalist and a Masters World silver medalist. He's also an ADCC Trials finalist and a New York Open champion. He is a highly respected instructor and taught for many years at Marcelo Garcia Academy in New York City. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to be joined today for the fourth time on the show by Professor Paul Schreiner. How are you today, Paul?
I'm great. Happy to be here.
Excellent. It's great to have you back, Paul. I think it's been 2022, so it's been a couple of years since you were on the show last. I know you had a move since then, man. You headed back out to your home state of California. What sparked that to happen?
I did, yeah. Basically, my girlfriend got a job out here, and so we decided to make a move. We'd been thinking about moving out of New York just for something new for a while. My girlfriend was kind of born and raised in the city, had lived overseas a fair amount as well, but was, from New York, is looking to live somewhere else to try. And yeah, I was feeling, I think, a little claustrophobic in the city the last couple of years overall. Like we were, I wanted to kind of like get back closer to the ocean and closer to my family. Both my parents are here in California. So it worked out. My girlfriend got a job out here, and so we decided to make the move.
That's great. Now, what would you say, besides the weather, are the biggest differences, culturally especially, between living in New York City and Los Angeles? Honestly, Los Angeles is brand new for me. So I've only really been to Los Angeles in the past for jiu-jitsu tournaments. So it's just been a few days here and there, but I've been coming for jiu-jitsu tournaments to LA since I was a teenager, basically. So I have a little bit of experience with the city, but it's been very transitory. Like I don't have a lot of friends here. I don't know what to do in the city. It's just like seems like a lot of time in your car. But yeah, and I have to say I do miss a lot of parts about New York, or a lot of things about New York. I really miss the academy at Marcelo's. And I miss my friends, and I miss the surf community that I was lucky to be a part of out there. So, I'm still kind of finding my footing here in LA, but yeah, it does feel, I don't know. It feels comfortable to be back in California, though. It does, even though LA is new for me. It does. I'm only, I'm 5 hours from where I grew up and where my parents are. So I've been able to go visit my folks a few times, and do little weekend trips and stuff. So. Now, I know you're from Northern California. That's something for people outside of California. We hear about that a lot. There's NorCal and SoCal. Culturally, what are some of the big differences between those two regions?
I grew up in Santa Cruz, which is really like, I feel like its own category within Northern California or North Central California. Santa Cruz is a weird place. It's like, it's a redneck hippie university town, like all mixed together with a lot of stabbings and good waves. So it's like,
Can't forget the stabbings. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a weird place, but it's a unique place. I feel like, I mean, I guess everyone has that relationship to their hometown, but it feels really special. I feel really lucky to have been born and raised there.
Now, you mentioned that you missed the connection you had to the surf community that you had in New York. For the people that don't know, you're an avid lifelong surfer. So I imagine being back on the West Coast is going to give you plenty of opportunity to continue surfing.
Yeah, I'm on the east side in LA. So honestly, it's like about the same amount of time to get to the water as it was when I was in New York. And to be honest, like, I know there's great waves in Southern California, but I prefer the waves in New York.
Really?
Yeah. So I think there's something special about the East Coast surf scene. It's not as consistent, but the waves are, super, like the waves I like to surf, they're square, powerful barreling waves kind of right on the beach usually. And it involves a lot of, like local knowledge and chasing swells around, but it's not as big a scene, I guess. It feels a little bit more like the surf scene in Santa Cruz was growing up, I think, like in terms of like just the tightness of the community there. So I've been really lucky to, have been kind of a part of some pretty cool surf communities, like basically based around a particular wave, like in Brazil, growing up in, the wave I grew up surfing in California or in Santa Cruz. And then the wave that I surfed on the East Coast. So I don't want to give actually the specifics, but it was in kind of the further east in Long Island. But it's kind of been I think like a big orienting factor in my life in terms of like, kind of giving me a home energy wise and like a community of people. That's honestly what drew me to jiu-jitsu, is it always felt a lot like that,
Yeah. Last time you and I spoke, I told you all about my phobia of sharks, and that's really the only thing that's kept me away from surfing. But man, the more research I do, it turns out where I live here, I'm only an hour from the beach, and there's not really like any shark activity here. Like I think the last recorded a death of someone from a shark was something like in the 1800s or something like that. And it's really, really low occurrences of interaction between people and sharks here. So I think I'm going to really try this year to overcome that fear, get in the water and do some surfing. And once I do, I will hit you up for some tips, because you're far more seasoned than I am. So
yeah, I'm not a good surfer. I should throw that out there too. Like I love it. I've done it my whole life, but I'm definitely not good at it. On the scale of like when you look at people who are good, how good they are. But I get a lot of inspiration from surfing, and like I was thinking about that, recently. Like I've been super lucky to be around, surfers that I find inspirational. I've been really lucky to be around like jiu-jitsu players that and coaches and stuff that I've been inspired by. But like jiu-jitsu right now, since I moved in December, I drove across the country actually. So I had movers take all my stuff, and then I drove out to kind of, I think, even make like an energetic break from New York, to not just like walk out of an airplane and be in California, but to kind of, get to enjoy the process of the move. So I drove out, and my girlfriend met me in Montana. So I drove the first leg, which is kind of the rough part of the drive. And then from Montana, we met up and explored and did some, snowboarding and fly fishing and stuff on the way to California. Visited my mom, or both my parents actually. And since I've been here, I haven't really, I don't have a home academy yet. I've been super lucky to train with some good people and good friends out here, but I don't have like that
home academy. I don't have Marcelo's. And so it's been fun to kind of reconnect with jiu-jitsu as a fan. You know, like I'm still trying to get better every day. I don't always have the training that I did or the coaching opportunities yet. So I'm studying a lot of matches. I'm trying to spend as much time on the mat as I can, but I'm spending a lot of time like just as a fan. And I feel like it's a pretty exciting time to be a fan of jiu-jitsu. Like the level's so high, you know, and so it's been, I feel like it's been a good, a good few months to just focus on my own fitness, continuing to, get my knee back to where it needs to be and just be like getting really inspired for training. So I'm kind of like feeling the same way that I'm a fan of like, Carissa Moore and John Florence and surfing. Like I'm a fan of the Rotolos and Mika Galvao, Maisa Bastos, Tynan Dalbra. So I've been really like super in love with jiu-jitsu still, but even more so, not having, that not being able to be on the mats at Marcelo's every day.
I think sometimes when jiu-jitsu is your profession as well as your passion, sometimes there's kind of a weird balance where you can get overloaded on one topic, no matter how much you love a particular topic. Sometimes it's like, man, okay, I wake up, I do this for a job, then I enjoy it. Sometimes when you don't have the obligation of approaching it as a profession, it can make you lean more back into just being a fan again, like you said, which I think that's a really cool perspective, actually.
Yeah. No, I will say I've always been a fan. Like sometimes I've taken myself out of jiu-jitsu. I can take myself out of jiu-jitsu mode always with surfing and fly fishing. And I've, probably gone through periods of my jiu-jitsu career where I've gotten too obsessed about fly fishing and surfing and taken myself away from jiu-jitsu a little too much for periods of time. But, I study every day. I try to be on the mat every day in some capacity. And I still go to bed. Like usually the last thing I think about is jiu-jitsu, and the first thing I think about the next day is jiu-jitsu. And it's like how to understand it better, how to teach better, how to run better practices, So yeah, it's still like gives me focus.
I think what you said though, having lateral interests in hobbies and passions is really important too. I think that the people that seem to have the most longevity in jiu-jitsu are the people that are able to balance it out a little bit, take little breaks here and there mentally. For example, you mentioned fly fishing and surfing. I skateboard a little, I play guitar a little, but I'm very much like you. At the end of the day, it's usually the last thing I'm thinking of at night and the first thing in the morning too.
Totally.
So it's one of those things, it can take over if you don't have anything else going on in your mind about it, So, well, let me ask you this, man. Obviously California, man, no shortage of good jiu-jitsu out there. Where have you been training mostly? And, do you have any plans to open your own school, once you get settled in?
Yeah. So, I do a lot of my training, my like daily training with the stunt actors at 8711 Action Design. They're the team behind the John Wick franchise. And I've been working with them for, about 8 years now. Like, so I fly out for a week or two at a time. And like based around their project schedule typically. And since I've been out here, I've been more consistent, and I've been also, learning some, the other side, the actual choreography rather than, just being the one teaching the jiu-jitsu. So that's been great. And then I was training a lot with the group that Isaac Doderlin was, teaches. So I've been jumping in there, which is mostly competitors, and training with some of the I went to Gracie Academy like a couple weeks ago, or to Gracie University, to do some rounds with Huron. It was incredible. He has like such a unique perspective on jiu-jitsu is different from the way that I typically train when I'm around, but like his level is so high, like, or his jiu-jitsu IQ is so high, especially when it comes to like defense and survival and no time limit approach, like kind of no rules, no time limit approach to the sport. So I always learn a bunch when I get to train with him. And then I've been traveling, teaching workshops and stuff. So in seminars, so I always try to train a lot, or often try to train a lot when I can. I just did a seminar up at the Paragon in San Luis Obispo, and when did their they run a huge Sunday open mat, so got a bunch of good training in there. And I'm planning to open a school, so I'm hoping to have a school open by the fall, conservatively, hopefully a little sooner. But it's going to be can't announce the exact location yet, but hopefully I'll have a lease signed in the next week or two. It's going to be on the east side in LA. So
that's outstanding, man. That's really exciting stuff. Paul, what kind of vision do you have for your academy? You've obviously taught at, one of the most elite academies in the world, and you've trained in other extremely elite academies also. What would you say is your ultimate vision with your own academy?
I really want to build community and teach good jiu-jitsu and have high level jiu-jitsu. I don't think I want to be focused on, trying to make everyone a competitor, but I want to create an environment where people can, pursue whatever their goals are, like be it high level competition or just to be part of that community and train. I personally don't have any competition aspirations, myself. I might compete again for fun. But I want to be, I want to help build an environment that where people can compete, but people can also just come in and train and kind of, similar to Marcelo's, like have access to, very, very high level jiu-jitsu, competitive roles, but fun and good environment. That's the goal.
I just recently had Marcelo on the show again, and we were talking a little bit about he's opening his new school in Hawaii.
Yeah. And
we were actually on the same topic. I was complimenting him on his academy because, as you know, I've dropped in there a couple times, saw you guys. But one of the things I always talked about Marcelo's school was just the great balance he had between really solid competitive guys, like the highest level competitors, and then just day-to-day people who also were reaching very high levels in skill and ability. And the vibe of the school was very welcoming, because sometimes that can be a hard balance, like having like an intense, tough training team, a competition team, while also keeping the place light and relaxed and welcoming enough for day-to-day people to come in and not feel like, okay, yeah, maybe this is like way more focused on competitors for what I'm looking for. What do you think are some of the most important things to have in place in order to have an environment where everyone, no matter what your goals are, feels like they're in the right spot?
That's a good question. I mean, I think it just kind of starts with kind of the energy or the tone that you set and the expectations that you set, from the beginning. And it also depends on who walks through the door. Like you have to. I have the mindset like I want to. I want whoever walks through to be able to experience and see what I see from jiu-jitsu. That said, it doesn't, I struggle with that a little bit. Like, it's like working your way up the lineup or the pecking order at a surf spot until you're part of the community. There's a little bit of that in jiu-jitsu too. So I don't think that it's like, you should just, walk in and you're king of the mat 100%. Like there's still like a tradition there. And that comes from just respect for the art, and so, but I try to get whoever walks in the door and whoever's been in my classes to kind of see what I see in jiu-jitsu and kind of see why I'm passionate about it. And as a teacher, that's, you know, what I can do. And then just try to run classes in a way that where everyone is included, you know, and that we're included as a group. And again, that's like the foundation of jiu-jitsu is the same as the foundation of judo in that respect. It's like, you know, the twin ideas of efficiency or maximum efficiency for minimal effort or the technical side. And then the idea of mutual benefit, and that, you know, where you're there to get better, you're there to get your training partner better, you're there to help the room get better, and then you take that into the rest of your life. So, I mean, there's really no secret to it. Like, it just, the recipe, why Marcelo's always worked, I think, was Marcelo did a great job of making hard training fun, you know? And so I want to have a school where the training is challenging, but we can meet, it's challenging in a flexible way, so we can meet people where they're at and kind of bring them along and, you know, get them good at jiu-jitsu. Yeah.
You know, something you just said there, you mentioned the importance of creating an environment where there's mutual benefit, regardless of what skill level or experience level the person's at. That's an interesting thing to ask you at this phase right now, because you're at the point now where you're hoping to open a school within the year. And one of the things that I know happens a lot of times when people start from scratch in a new city or a new state and open a school is you never really know who's going to come in and sign up right away. You might get a handful of people that have never done a class of jiu-jitsu in their life. You might get a guy that wrestled. You might have a purple belt walk in and say, hey man, you know, I know who you are. I want to learn from you, and or just moved here myself. So when you have a situation like that where you don't really have a whole lot of control over the amount of people that are coming in the doors within the first year, how do you create an environment where those guys can all train and benefit from each other? Let's say, you know, you have 3 brand new white belts and maybe a blue belt, and then a, you know, former wrestler. What kind of structure within the class can ensure that all of those people get what they're looking for in training?
We're trying to enjoy training and enjoy the process and have it, you know, make our lives better, but we're trying to get better at something too, right? And so when we're acquiring skill, we're, you know, like all coaching, whatever your methodology is, like where you're basically going from, you're increasing variability, you're increasing the challenge point, which is going to be different for every athlete. But the biggest variable and the most important factor to scaling variability, I think, you know, in my opinion, is your training partner. I think the easiest way to manage that when you have like really disparate levels in the room, or you know, not as many students, is with specific training and with task-based games. You know, like a lot of people, I've been exploring like approaches to skill acquisition that are kind of rooted in ecological psychology. Like I was introduced to it a couple years ago from Roger Dardis, who's a coach for the Royal Grappling in Ireland, but he's a MGA affiliate. I think that that's the easiest, or, you know, probably the best approach for dealing with that situation. I don't think it's the only approach that works by any means. You really have to give credit to Greg Souders for, you know, for popularizing that and bringing it into the sport, into the mainstream.
Yeah, the ecological approach to learning in jiu-jitsu is something that's getting talked about more and more. You mentioned, Souders is like at the forefront of that. I personally love the idea of implementing games and things like that into learning, like objective-based games into learning. I think it makes, like you said, the training becomes a lot more fun. What have been some of your favorite applications of that in the way that you teach? Like, are there any games that you actively use with your students, and which ones have been most effective in your opinion?
I think it's the games are always changing based on what I'm seeing in the room. And I don't exclusively teach with games. I want to put that out there. I think there was, especially when I was first kind of playing with the methodology, like I think I was really like over constraining things. So I do have a lot of games that are usually based on, you know, like a starting point connection. I just, as an example of a game that worked for us really well, is like something that Marcelo would do, just practicing holding someone down. So we would oftentimes be in groups of 3, but sometimes just with a single partner. And we'd start in side control. One person there's no submissions allowed, no escapes allowed. So you're not even allowed to get back to guard. You just have a person on the bottom. You have to keep one shoulder on the mat and kind of turn side to side. And person on top, you have to try to put 2 of their shoulders on the mat. So if the person on bottom can turn 3 times, they win. If the person on top can hold the 2 shoulders on the mat for 3 seconds, they win. It's an incredibly challenging game. That's why positional training works so well, I think, is that it allows you to meet the athlete where they are in terms of like how you're managing variability as a coach, and it gives the athlete room to explore.
There's micro games and then there's macro games, right? Like, yes. So for example, commonly we see games where like, okay, one guy has guard, the other guy's in guard, the guy in guard pass, the guy with guard sweep, go, right? And then that's a game, sure, but I really like what you're describing. You're talking about like the really zooming in on pinning and weight distribution and control. And then for the person on bottom, escaping, creating angles. I've seen a lot of games too, where people will focus on just grip fighting alone. Like if you're able to hold specific grips for certain amounts of time, you win. If the guy's able to reverse grips and get his favorable grips, he wins. And I love these games that are zoomed way in, because I think too commonly in jiu-jitsu, sometimes we think about games as being winning or losing via sweeps or submissions or positional transitions.
Which is super valuable too, though, right? Because then it expands you don't want to over constrain to a point where you're taking out information that they're going to need for the real thing. But I mean, that's the beauty of the approach, is it allows you to kind of scaffold skill acquisition by manipulating, the task constraints, and environmental constraints and partner constraints, individual constraints also. But it allows you to amplify, information without giving, procedural step-by-step instructions. Now, I still do teach, especially when I do seminars, like I'll teach and give a lot of detail, but I try to, and I think maybe that's a reason why my teaching has resonated for a lot of people over the years, is I provide a lot of, often teach with a lot of detail, and I've gone down on wrong tracks for sure over the years. But I try to teach with a lot of detail in a way that's like illustrative of like kind of like almost like in an academic setting, like studying as a solution. It doesn't mean that it has to be your solution, but we can look at why it works. We could look at like, I always try to approach a position. I guess it would be what's invariant about the position, but I always refer to it as like the lowest common denominator. Like, what are the 2 or 3 or 4 things that are the key details to the position, or the key points that allow it to work. And then when you it allows you to start to see the connections between positions. It allows you to start to kind of 3-dimensionalize your jiu-jitsu, which is one of the drivers for evolution, I think, both on like a personal level in the sport as you adapt, but also like in a meta perspective on the sport too, right? It's like you see whatever movement emerge, and then that can happen from top and bottom and left and right and inverted and et cetera. So I'm always trying to think of jiu-jitsu in novel ways, and I try to kind of present different perspectives to push students to look for to look in a particular direction for the solution, and maybe sometimes offer examples, but not offer. It's not like top down, and I think, I mean, there's been times where I have not really followed that so much in teaching, but I've more and more, come back to that approach.
Something that always impresses me with high level teachers is that so much of their knowledge and their study has to be done on just jiu-jitsu as a whole. Like I think for a lot of people, we get stuck in this path of, okay, here's the things that I'm personally really good at, and I'm going to really sharpen these and focus on these tools. Whereas as a teacher, you have to have a pretty wide encyclopedia of understanding to help particular students, because what works for one guy might not work for another. Have you found that to be the case? Have you found that as a teacher, it's caused you to be much more broadly studying jiu-jitsu than you might otherwise be if you were just focusing on your own game?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And also like it's made me, or it makes me really curious to study across sport. Like I was listening to Primoz Roglic's, I don't know how to pronounce his name properly, at Bora Hansgrohe, the cyclist's performance trainer, yesterday, talk about how he approaches, balancing training volume and intensity, duration, and I look to across sports, across disciplines to try to, just understand coaching better. So I think that I like to read, I like to read the academic work, but more so I like to, be exposed to real people and like watch coaches in other disciplines work and think about how I can translate that to jiu-jitsu, or find inspiration as a fan and think about how I can, translate like what I'm seeing to kind of energize myself and the room, whatever room I'm part of. So yeah, it definitely has. That's something I think I've always like thought a lot about, is like the nature of the art or of the sport. I think that had a lot to do with being injured really early and for so long. Like I've mentioned this, I think, on the past, but like I had a knee injury as a teenager that then the surgery got infected and the infection spread into my femur, and it was like basically like a life-threatening situation for a period of time. And then I was like on a PICC line of antibiotics for like the better part of a year. And, my leg was basically frozen at 65 degrees of flexion or something like that, 50 degrees of flexion for almost a year. And then like I was kind of very slowly able to rehab that. And then that led, fast forward to, I think about the last time we talked, maybe I had a total knee replacement. So then I've been working through that the last 2 years, and like my knee feels incredible. So it's been like super exciting also to teach and to train with like what feels like pretty healthy, or more, a knee that's more mobile than it's been basically since I've been a teenager. So, and I feel like I learned a lot about myself. I remember listening to an orthopedic surgeon talk about, I think the guy who did Kobe's knees, said that one thing about elite athletes is that the injuries always make them better, because they have to kind of step back and analyze like, what mechanically they're doing with their body to kind of avoid that again. And they transfer that insight to some other aspect of the game, and they start to understand the sport in a deeper level. And so I tried to consciously like harness that. So I think that it made me adapt as a coach to kind of helping people find alternate solutions. So I think overall that was like a pretty positive process. And I think that was the last thing I'd say about coaching, is that it's a little hard to talk about, like in the abstract, right? Like what we're doing, or even teaching. Like I mentioned when you're off air, like I feel like I struggle teaching to a camera. It doesn't feel the same. Like jiu-jitsu is something that you pass person to person. And even within a practice, like I'm trying to provide, putting a frame on a practice space, energy wise or whatever. So we walk in and we work hard together to get better and whatever. But within that kind of meta structure, it's really focused on like individuals, right? And how those individuals are relating to the environment and how they're relating to each other and, to themselves and their own development. And so I'm trying as a coach to provide like some umbrella that's giving the resources there or providing the environment to help people get better. But I'm trying to, nudge, individuals to get better, because I think that's how, ultimately we learn and we get better at jiu-jitsu is we identify what our weakness is, and then we try to address it as directly as possible. And that could be studying solutions that have worked for other people, and then trying to put ourselves in those situations in a way that amplifies the information and so we're getting feedback, and then there's momentum there. And so, then what we do as a coach and as an athlete, like I'm thinking of, they're thinking of, and we come back the next day and we try to, take whatever we learned the day before and we tweak things. And so, I mean, that's my approach, is it's really individual driven, I think.
What are some traditional methodologies that you've seen exist in jiu-jitsu that you wouldn't personally repeat in your own school?
Yeah, totally. Like, and I don't think anything is useless necessarily. It's to the degree that it's used, it might be there's an opportunity cost, right? Like warm-ups. I think there's a lot of benefit to warming up as a group, like just bringing the energy together, like running in a circle around the mat isn't going to make you better at jiu-jitsu, and if you amplify or if you extend out like the minutes per class that you're running in a circle around the mat and take that over a year, that's like that's a real amount of time. And then you take that over 10 years and whatever. And that said, like I will still have a class run in the beginning, or at Marcella's I would, because oftentimes like we have a class that starts at 7:00 and we have a class that went from 6 to 7. So it ends right, at 6:59 and we start the next class at 7. And so to get people running is a way to like demarcate participation in the next class and kind of get that energy back together. And I think it does a better job than like everyone starting with a game or starting with, whatever else. It's just like a way to, again, kind of put an entry frame on the space or on the time that we're working. So, but like as an example, minimizing warm-ups, minimizing explanation of going deep into details, which I used to do in the past, and even like within the I guess nonlinear pedagogy kind of community, that, and when you get to some like donor sports or sports that are kind of their function is to increase action capacity rather than like focused skill development, like using free running, parkour, gymnastics, whatever, as a precursor sport to learning wrestling or judo or grappling or whatever, right? Like I still see, like I see a lot of people saying like forward rolls are a waste of time, or break falls, or, which I kind of agree with a lot of the break falls, but in a way, I think that that's still helping people, as long as the challenge point is still present. It still functions to again increase action capacity, like increase like what we're capable of. So, I was a big proponent of like refining these base movements endlessly, and I think I don't believe in that really anymore. Like the kind of like Japanese style uchikomi, approach to hip escapes or forward rolls or whatever. But that said, I do like to have sometimes a period of like physical exploration that's not necessarily one for one what we're doing in jiu-jitsu. Is that going to make you better at jiu-jitsu? I don't know. But I think it's still open for debate, like to explore those spaces, to learn how, like as an example, like I'm with the stunt team. I mean, one, I realized I never learned how to break fall properly, like for stunts, at least, like to be able to take really high amplitude falls and take a variety in falls on like harder surfaces and stuff. And, I have off and on few years of judo and 27, 28 years of jiu-jitsu. And I've done a lot of break falling, but like the way that they break fall for stunts is, it's very, specific and very unique, and it's real because they're falling, over and over, like, really like at a high intensity on hard surfaces. So like what they're doing works, right? And like seeing how they approach learning those break falls, and like being in a part of that process, and the trampoline work and working on a spring floor, and the kind of the different ways to kind of build towards those more dynamic falling techniques. Like I feel like that's made me a lot more have a different kind of proprioception, like even in grappling, where I see in myself at 46 years old, like I'm getting better from that, or I feel like I'm getting better from that, in terms of how I'm moving, what I'm capable of doing in training. So I think there is a transference that happens that I don't understand. And so I'm not going to completely throw that out. I do think maybe it's not the most efficient use of time, but I think there's still something there to explore, especially like if you're not a black belt yet, if you haven't kind of grown into your jiu-jitsu body and like made those physical adaptations to grappling. I think expanding your kind of physical vision isn't a bad thing. Like learning how to roll and move in a variety of ways on the ground. Like I mentioned, kind of stealing or my introduction to constraints or even to any kind of like nonlinear approaches, and like getting away from blocked learning, moving towards external cueing and whatever that, like my introduction to that really came from Roger Dardis first and foremost, and then coaches in other disciplines and like, surfers and stuff like that. But just kind of understanding that learnings is still somewhat a mysterious process. And it's still something that like, I came from I went to school for anthropology before I was like doing jiu-jitsu full time. And my dad's a archaeologist or anthropologist, and my aunt and uncle were anthropologists. So I was like around that. And I remember there was like a question on in a graduate seminar that I did of like people can come into anthropology or probably any discipline, like at that level, like they could be like a cultural relativist, or like, really into cultural anthropology. They could be like on the opposite end, like they could come from psychological anthropology. And they end up kind of a lot of times at the same place, like, or their work kind of ends up in a very similar place. And it's because, like, my professor who's leading the workshop would argue that the practice of ethnography, of like going into like a different culture and immersion, and the practice that's like, anthropology is built on, is so much more powerful, like the reality of it, than the whatever academic model that you're scaffolding from in the beginning, that it kind of flattens things in a way, or leads to this, like, a real experience. And I think the training flattens those approaches in jiu-jitsu too, as long as you keep yourself open to it. You don't get too, like, the training's the truth. Like the jiu-jitsu's the truth. And we have to kind of keep ourselves in that space to keep growing. And I want to keep the students in that space to keep growing. We start to get good at one or two things, and it's easy to, then it's all about, like, kind of balancing, like, you keep getting good at what you're good at already, or keep refining what you're good at, or do you keep, like, exploring? And I'm of the mind, it's like, that jiu-jitsu is bigger than just winning a tournament. Like the pursuit of kind of completeness that we have in the sport or in the art. So, we should always be looking to our weaknesses to improve. Yeah.
Paul, there's something you said a second ago that I really liked. You said that there's so much that we still don't understand about learning. And that's so true, man. And not to mention that everyone learns differently. Like there's different people that just absorb things in different ways. That's one of my favorite things about what I do here is I love picking the brains of people like yourself, both, successful coaches and instructors and athletes, about how they learn and what they do with data that they receive and how they best categorize things and log it. So I really do appreciate expanding on all this. There's something you said earlier also. You said that you used to teach things over and over in repetition in an effort to make people better and better at them. But then eventually you changed your mind on that. What was it that changed your mind about that, if you don't?
I think just like watching, like watching how Marcelo improves, or watching how, like great surfers that I get to, I've been able to be around, like seeing how they get better and stuff. That it's not really I think it's more about kind of like running up against those physical parameters of like what's working or not, and problem solving and figuring it out, and that process is messy in a way that's like it can be hard to see that improvement is happening. Like if you look at it at any individual point, but like having been around that for a longer period and seeing how the best get better, and like kind of taking that away, rather than like I had like a really kind of traditional like uchikomi focused idea of skill application before. And again, I'm not against drilling. Like I think that, there's a lot of degrees of drilling where you can kind of like incorporate people's reactions. Like look at this is one thing that a lot of people who apply the nonlinear pedagogy in jiu-jitsu, in my opinion, somewhat miss, is like we are a relatively new sport. We are we have a very like market driven approach to teaching, but the examples are almost always like, well, look at wrestling. But wrestling, people drill, because you're it might not be the same way that, you know, we're talking about drilling in jiu-jitsu, but like just moving a body is, you know, part of the of what we're doing. Like, and if like we have different ways to dial down resistance or put little frames on that. But even going in and like when you're trying to explore a new move, like I get a lot of, I feel like I really start to understand and accelerate my learning process. And for the students, when I kind of teach something and then have them explore it a little bit without much resistance, even though, you know, of course, like the base level representative environment for grappling practice is having someone resisting what you're trying to do to them. But I think that understanding the feeling of manipulating the body and just the weight, and sometimes that's enough, you know, oftentimes that's enough. Like it's almost like a donor sport in and of itself, like drilling. Like it's not jiu-jitsu, you know, like drill, like just repeating a move isn't. So I do think that there can be a benefit there. I think after you understand how to do the move, like after it's repeatable, you don't need to keep drilling it. Like that's the part where, you know, I think I would deviate from that. You know, that jiu-jitsu is not a sport that even in the way that like, I think judo is more like that, for example. Like you have someone, you know, I don't know I mean, I read this in a book, so I don't know how 100% true it was, but like where Koga was in judo is that he would just do uchikomi. And even there would be periods in his Olympic preparation where he wouldn't spar with anyone or he wouldn't do any randori because he felt that that anyone who trained with wasn't at his level and was going to like dull the blade rather than help him sharpen his reactions, you know, like, and so he would just do like the uchikomi, but it can be like that idea can still be cohesive, I think, because the longer that the more experience, the more understanding in the sport, the more representative you can make drilling. So like just doing arm bars or whatever move like over and over and over for a beginner, for someone who's brand new, like I used to, again, like that was how kind of I was taught. Like that was the approach that I kind of thought was best. Again, it does work to some extent, but now I would say like there's a lot more opportunity for that to work in someone who's very advanced because they can like be visualizing and they can recreate the representative nature of what they're doing in a way that kind of is still, you know, cohesive. Yeah, a little all over the place with that answer, but
that was great.
Yeah.
No, that was great, man. It really speaks to me because I think that around the time I got to like my higher blue belt, close to purple, I started to realize that like the issues I was having rolling and competing wasn't so much that I wasn't biomechanically doing the move correctly. Like I knew how to position my hips and how to move to do an arm bar, say. But it was more about making it work on a resisting person. Like when they start throwing their defensive variables in or leaning away with posture or not committing an arm to where I need it to be, that's when it became tough for me to start applying it against better people. And I think that what you're saying here is really great. Like obviously having the biomechanical understanding of how to make an arm bar work is great. Now you got to know how to make the other person commit their arm to the wrong place or you have to figure out how to trick them into letting you put them into an arm bar. And I feel like by drilling, that doesn't really accomplish that anymore at a certain point. So I totally agree with you.
And that's where, you know, that's where the constraints-led approach, I think, can really shine, is you can amplify it gives you the tools to amplify, different parts of the environment and kind of different directions of like where the information is that you need to be attuning to make that work. And then you could keep putting yourself into that environment, and you can tweak that, in various ways for the individual. And I think I've mentioned on the podcast last time, but one of the training approaches that, like for intermediate and advanced and professional athletes, that I really do like to approach is, or I like to play with is, I originally took from Lachlan Giles and, kind of made it my own or tweaked it, but it's like, it's kind of understanding this, playing with the idea of like movements connecting and offensive cycles and cycles of defense and breaking those, as related to like our connection, the nature of our connection to our opponent, but is doing like a exploration drill round where maybe we, I take 3 minutes or 5 minutes to do the position that I'm working on, or it could be the same position. It could be an advanced class or a pro level class. I'll have the students come in and pick their position, or we've talked about it together to figure out something that they're trying to work on, and they can kind of go over the mechanics in a fluid way with their opponent. Like, okay, give me a little resistance here. Stop. Okay. Like, what happened? Okay. This worked. Let me repeat that. All right. Now, post on me and let me figure out how to clear that post. And then I'll see if I can get underneath you, whatever it is. And then you and your opponent do that. And then you go right into, specific training in that situation, but where there's purposely no constraints other than the initial starting point, the initial starting connection, whatever those grips are, whatever that positioning is. And the person whose round it is calls the start and stop. And that way there's no way to win. There's no way for the resisting person to win. It's all exploration, but there can still be a lot of intensity there, but there's something about that, that mode of training where like, the magic happens. And then I make sure that there's time to talk about what happened afterwards. But, just as an example, like say I start with a seated guard position. I have an underhook and arm trap. So I'm basically trying to do a butterfly sweep. If I sweep and I still feel connected, like I can continue to pass. I can continue to play side control. But the second I feel someone kills my position in a way that it breaks and I have to reconnect, that's where I call a stop. So it could be that the position broke, but I went to single leg X and now we're still playing from there. So it allows you to be very, very fluid and explore, but kind of as long as you are honest with yourself about when things break, you just stop and you reset. And then you could tweak the reset position a little bit. Okay, let's start right there now. And that was where things fell apart. You do 2 reps there. Then you talk a little bit about, and then you go right to another group and they haven't done the drill with you or anything. And you explain, okay, I'm starting in this position and I'm basically trying to sweep you, or I'm trying to pass you, I'm trying to submit you. You're going to, try to stop me. And then again, it's the same idea. You break, you stop the training based on, when you feel things fall apart. And then it allows you, it's still malleable enough. So it's you can kind of change it, as needed with opponents. Or with partners, you can focus on one thing. Like, so if you're going with someone who's way lower level than you can kind of find a part of the position that's really competitive that you need to get better at. And, that's simple for them in a way where it's a simple fight to engage in, and you can spend a little bit more time there. So as long as you're dealing with, athletes that are experienced enough to kind of, manipulate that, then I feel like that training has been, so beneficial for me as a coach and an athlete.
So for people who are taking that more like exploratory approach, it seems to me that being able to catalog all that data you're collecting would be a really important thing. How do you typically encourage students to do that? Are you big on them taking notes? Are there apps that exist that you think are good for
I think
mind maps?
That's really individual. Yeah. I mean, I just like, there was a time when I would write things down. I still in my notes app in my phone is just like hundreds and hundreds of notes about like relationships of different body parts that I've thought about, like, the ways to always like chunk information and generalize things so I could teach in a more concise but more precise way, like simultaneously. So I think it's really individual. I think just thinking about things as you're going home a lot of times is enough, but giving yourself some space to kind of digest what you've been learning. For some athletes, maybe it's taking a day off. But yeah, whatever it is, it's like, I think that part's pretty, it's pretty individual. I don't really try to intervene or give too many ideas. I think you can really like over categorize things too, because that's not, that decision tree of jiu-jitsu is, it's a map. It's not the terrain.
It's a great quote. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. It's a map.
Right, not my quote, right? The map is not the terrain. It's like, that was said in Anthropology a lot, but I don't think it, I don't even know if it originally came from an anthropologist, but yeah, that's how I see. I want to make sure that like in jiu-jitsu as a teacher, as a coach, that I'm not just teaching the map, right? Like I'm trying to get students to understand the tactics and the mechanics of the art in a way that they can explore the terrain in a more efficient way, and the terrain that will their jiu-jitsu will come from that, but having that understanding of the mechanics that work, because there's a lot of data out there to show what works and what's efficient, what isn't, and finding that balance between exploration and studying, solutions is kind of what I'm looking for as a teacher.
How do you think the curriculum of your school is going to look like? Are you going to follow a pretty rigid curriculum, or is this going to be more conceptual approaches to each class? Like, how would you define that?
I think like, there's so much variation within the positions in jiu-jitsu that they can, the idea of blocked learning gets a little fuzzy. Like, obviously it's proven to not be as sticky as kind of a interwoven approach. But, I think spending a week or two on one position, focusing mostly on kind of task relationships. Like, so I like to try to understand positions in terms of task order, because like overall, again, the big picture of jiu-jitsu, try to understand everything that's happening in jiu-jitsu in terms of what, like, your thought process is safety, which is always going to be contextual, based on what you're allowed to do. If you could hit, or if you could use a weapon, if you just grapple, if you could grab the gi, if there's no gi. So that like what safety means in the, in the jiu-jitsu context, in a sporting context, is like what keeps you fighting, what keeps you going, right? Because like, obviously, like it's not just like a knee that could come in and hit you and knock you out or injure you or something, but it's like a submission hold that you have to tap. It's a threat to your safety. right? We just tap so we can learn and keep going. We don't have to, take 6 months off before we step on the mat again. But so it's safety first, and then it's position and submission. Submissions can come anywhere in the exchanges, but they come as a result of positional relationships to your partner. So, but number one is always safety. So it's safety, positional improvement, adjustment, advancement, and submission. And you can tweak those based on, everyone's tolerance to safety and risk and stuff is going to be different and whatever. So that it's not immutable, but it's always, in that order. So I try to teach a position like, first always like, what could you do? Like a guard position. So number one in the guard, especially if I was teaching a beginner, I do like to go back to jiu-jitsu as like a fighting art or self-defense, whatever you want to call it, because it helps us understand where this came from, what we're doing with it. So we're trying to control distance from, let's say, just open guard. We're trying to control distance from our guard if we're having to worry about the strike. So it's, feet on soles of the feet from the hips to the shoulders, basically, right? Like trying to maintain those connections anytime someone is close enough to hit. So in the beginning of the games, I don't allow, kicks at first, and then, so you have to kind of touch the head as being representative of a strike, and person blocks. Okay. And then we can start to stabilize that relationship and improve that connection by becoming sticky, by using push-pulls and putting tension into those connections, because that's how we control an opponent from open guard, right, is through opposition of force, right? So we have a push-pull that put tension through our opponent, and that allows us to follow. So now we can, instead of just, being able to block an opponent that's coming too close to us, we can also block an opponent that's coming too close, but also prevent them from walking back and breaking the connection, which would make them dangerous again, because they could run around our legs or throw our legs to the side or whatever. And then so we can start controlling distance to and fro, and then we can start controlling lateral movement. And then we take away the potential for strikes. So they say, like, what's safety in that context? So the first thing that you have to be concerned about in safety in your guard, if there's no strikes, is someone jumping on submission. So it's someone jumping on your legs, it's someone jumping on a kimura, someone jumping on a guillotine, or flying triangle, flying omelet, whatever. But it's like those. So you have to have a connection that, first and foremost keeps you safe initially from that threat. Then the secondary threat is they get past your legs, and now they can hold you, for a long time in a pin where they can start to isolate your arms and stuff. So that's where like the guard retention kind of understanding comes from, and everything subsequent to that. So like if we were to take that task order to side control. So the first thing about side control, the most important thing is you're on top. We stay on top, and you hold your person down. You preserve that relationship in the fight. The second most important thing, I guess the most important thing is you don't get buggy choked, right? There's still that.
These days, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, there's still a safety component, right? So you have to keep yourself out. And every time it happens, you get buggy choked, you realize, okay, I can't have my head there. Or I can't, these are the common denominator that allow that to happen. So I have to build that awareness into, my next round. I mean, that was something that Marcelo was like, almost the biggest lesson I've ever learned from Marcelo is you have to learn from your mistakes. And it only takes a mistake one time in the academy once to learn from that for the rest of your life. You never have to make that same mistake again. And that's a choice. Might not have been a choice the first time you got caught with it, but it's a choice the next time, because, if you did the work, you should see like where that came from and why it happened, and, should have kept you up at night, whatever. So so it doesn't happen again. So first would be, don't get buggy choked. Yeah. So, or what whatever, one of those awkward arm locks or something from the bottom side control. Then it's hold the person down. Then it's don't let the legs become involved again. And then it's separate the arms from the body. It's don't let the person's palm of their hand or forearms touch you. And so we can staple arms and shelf arms and work arms away. And then, then we can start thinking about if we want to advance to another pin, or if we want to try to, or if we see opportunities for submissions there. So like I try to, going back to your question about like how I'm going to focus curriculum is I try to, create an environment where we can spend time in those positions, but I want to kind of, I try to provide task instructions and examples and, kind of the prerequisites for the movement solutions, whatever, and spend time there and adjust those based on the class, based on who's there, and kind of keep going in one vein for about week and a half, 2 weeks at a time, depending, and then see how that connects to the next thing. So I don't, except for like very beginners, the first 6 months, I don't love a repeating curriculum. I think one thing is when academies get too focused on a fixed curriculum, and you can have an outline and that's fine, and then you kind of go, but you usually see that next generation of students that come from the academy is not as good as the one that came before its implementation. They might know how to do all the moves better than the other students, but jiu-jitsu is not about doing moves. It's about the relationship between you and someone that's, trying to come get you and someone that's resisting what you're trying to do to them. So it is striking that balance, I think. So yeah, my plan for the academy is to for very beginners, there will be kind of a somewhat of a rotating schedule. We'll focus on the primary positions and get some experience there in a really safe way, and hopefully that is also building their fitness level and pushing their challenge point, so that then we can kind of expand and start to explore deeper in the kind of the second and third level classes. The idea is that there will basically be 3 levels of classes, like a very, very beginner focused class, kind of an all levels but more foundational class, and a kind of an advanced class.
You were talking about safety earlier, and something that I think very commonly is part of the curriculum when it comes to safety is learning how to break fall, learning how to fall properly. You mentioned earlier that you have a particular feeling about break falls. Would you mind elaborating on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think the coordination involved in like learning to break fall. Break falls work like in situations where movement is very prescribed or coordinated, I think. So I think if you are in a school or you're training with a coach or training for yourself and you want to do, 200 taitoshis on your partner, or 100, whatever, or 50 enough, and in a kind of more of a drilling format or a repetitive format, the break fall is going to save your body. It's going to help you like distribute that force. As soon as you're going live with full resistance, you want to be defending that throw, and you're not going to be kind of relinquishing your own controls to kind of find a certain position as you land on the mat. The nature of throws themselves are like, there's enough circularity in that you can, as you're defending, you're going to be rounded, you're going to be fine. You'll be slammed sometimes too, and you should be okay. It's a hard mat. We shouldn't be putting our hands on the mat in any time you're coming from, especially coming from your feet, but anytime where there's dynamic movement, you shouldn't be putting on your hands on the mat anywhere where you can't see them, right? So if your hands are outside your field of vision, it's going to be that's where most of the potential for injury exists. Like you can get injured in other ways too. So maybe the rolling and the break falling do help a little bit in taking a real fall, but you're not going to be rolling or break falling in live training, not the same way. Like it can help you get through the drilling portion, and if you're working stunts, it's a non-negotiable. You have to learn how to break fall properly and kind of meet the ground in a safe way. I don't think, I'm not opposed to teaching it somewhat, but I'm not going to put a big time investment in that, other than like the basic ground rules of kind of understanding how to how to not position your hands in a way to get hurt. I think learning somersaults and forward rolls are almost more important and back rolls to build an awareness of how to round your body, like as you land, and maybe how to like conform to your opponent as you land for safety, rather than finding some perfect. The only time a break fall that I can remember has like saved me is I fell out of a hammock one time in Brazil, and I like instinctively did like the double back break fall. And I remember like, oh shit, I think that worked. Like my arms were kind of cut up because I was high up, I fell on like dirt and rocks. I was like, I feel like my torso's okay. Now you watch how skateboarders fall. Like they're not like break falling, or they have their own technique to disperse momentum. Olympic wrestling or judo for that matter. So they're not really break falling. Although I did watch a judo match the other day, like a world level judo match where a guy did like a perfect break fall on a throw. It's like, I don't know if I've ever seen that before, but
that's awesome.
I think the value there is in like, if you're going to be thrown for reps, basically like a break fall can save your body. Maybe building the awareness to land somewhat on your side and keeping your chin tucked is important.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying about front rolls and back rolls. In fact, I had a private student of mine years ago who was the passenger. He was on the back of a motorcycle with someone else, and they hit a parked car. He flew over the driver of the thing and front rolled perfectly, saving himself. He was obviously all scraped up, but he was able to tuck his head and roll, falling full speed off this motorcycle. And he's adamantly says that's what saved him. So
yeah, my friend's brother, same thing. He was Olympian on the Greco-Roman team, and he was riding his motorcycle at 80 miles an hour, and he got hit by a car from behind that was going over 100 miles an hour. And so it threw him forward, and he did a series of forward rolls and somersaults, and he walked away fine, like no injuries. Like he was cut up and stuff, but yeah.
Those situations where you truly can say jiu-jitsu saved my life. Everyone, I think it's something a lot of people say. Those guys literally mean it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Well, Paul, man, I say we've reached the point of the show here. You've done this a couple times before, but we always play the pummel game halfway through the show. So for the people out there that are new to the show, the pummel's a game we play. It's a series of random questions. Some of these are related to jiu-jitsu. Some of them have nothing to do with jiu-jitsu. But Paul, if you'd like to play for the either third or fourth time now, I'd love to play this again with you.
Sure, let's do it.
All right, man. I've had a couple new questions since you've been on last. First question, what is the largest animal that you think you could beat in hand-to-hand combat?
like a manatee or something.
Manatee. Just pick something really sweet and gentle.
Something gentle.
That's a good strategy. I like it. So this is actually one I just thought of for you, man. You mentioned that you studied anthropology. What is your favorite ancient culture that you've studied?
You know what? I never studied that many like a lot of ancient cultures. I think, we did some reading, but most of what I was interested in was like contemporary stuff, like anthropology of cities, anthropology of interpersonal violence. One of my favorite professor in school, he wrote a lot about like the murders during Carnival in Brazil. I was like,
wow.
Very like hyper specific, but really interesting because it involved like all this social inversion. So most of mine was about that, but I will say like my dad studies, he's a Mayan archaeologist. So I would say the Mayans, because I grew up on basically like anthropological sites. Like we'd spend, at least a few months a year at different Mayan sites where my dad would be working or studying. So I feel like I have probably more of a connection to that ancient civilization than any others.
What's the most interesting thing your dad had discovered during his time doing that?
I think he most of his research is around road systems and like how like advanced the Mayan kind of like highway and road system was, and terraced gardening and stuff, but a lot of it was like limestone production and like plaster, and like how they had these roadways that were, I mean, essentially like smooth paved, that were hundreds, if not thousands of miles connecting, cities with multiple millions of people in them. So, super advanced and potentially also involved with the down or the crash of their civilization in ways. I think that I'm not super familiar with the research, but the idea is that the crash of the Mayan civilization was like involved more than like environmental degradation, or like was a change in seasonality. Was that the as the season shifted, or if there went through a period where there was a seasonality shift. So like the maybe the summers weren't, I don't know the specifics, but like the wet season, kind of extended through the dry season. So it didn't allow the crop cycle to continue as they were accustomed. It didn't lead to all the pests and the insects dying off. And so it just kind of like made a mess of the foundation of their society, which was agricultural. And it was something that, there was so much demand placed on that, for how big the population, how advanced their society was, that when that foundation was undercut, there was really no way to fix it.
The Mayans were really a fascinating culture, man. I watched a really good documentary. It was either by Smithsonian or National Geographic about everything about them, and it was very, very interesting. So that's really cool. You actually have to be there on sites with your dad and stuff.
Yeah, I want to
really
rewatch
cool.
Apocalypto. I was just talking to someone about that, how that was actually like a really fucking good movie. Like
Such a good movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always remember that guy who, the bad guy who was kind of like he was kind of like the right hand of the tribe that was capturing the jaguar. And he started calling him almost in their language, because he kept almost getting away or almost dying. And it's just, man, that guy was such a sinister character. I love that. That movie was very good. Let me ask you this, man. What's a secret talent that you have that people might not know about?
I don't know, probably, I mean, literally the only thing I do is jiu-jitsu, fly, fish, and surf. I'm actually, I'm not bad at grilling. I'm pretty good at grilling.
Oh, cool.
So
Nice.
now I used to cook a lot. Both my parents cook. My girlfriend's a really good cook. But I kind of like moved out of the kitchen to the backyard. So now I mostly just grill.
That's awesome. That's definitely a good skill to have, man, for sure. If you found a genie and you could get 3 wishes, standard genie rules apply, no killing people and no wishing for more wishes. What 3 wishes would you choose?
I don't know, probably like have a healthier body, you know, I mean, I feel I'm really lucky to be in good health and everything works, but you know, be more flexible, stronger, more resistant to injury, be a better surfer, and I don't know, maybe like a private island or something.
That'd be nice. Yeah. You get your own surfing spots and fly fishing spots and have the dexterity to explore every inch of it. That'd be cool.
Yeah. Like, I don't know, maybe like Scotland or something, you know, like an island up there rather than a tropical island. Yeah, that's somewhere where I really want to, like that part of the North Atlantic, I really want to go, spend some time surfing and fishing and, you know, just traveling there. Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
That's on my
Great
list.
answer.
Yeah.
I like that. What do you think is your favorite junk food to eat?
I've been really into these like Nellie's bars. Do you know what those are?
No. What's Nelly? What is that?
Nellie's bar. It's some kind of candy bar that you have to keep refrigerated that I buy from the, you know, pseudo health food store here.
Okay.
But I did a surf trip to P-Pass in December. It's my second time going there. And I just like brought a bunch. I went to the health food store in Hawaii and like bought a ton of different bars and stuff because like you're out on the boat all day, like at the wave. And I just randomly grabbed some Nellie's bars because they didn't have a lot of selection and they're so good. So I have one. I have one every day. It's like one of my treats.
How would you describe it? Like what
It's just like I mean I like the chocolate peanut butter coconut one, but it's just like I don't know. It tastes like a delicious candy bar that doesn't quite make you feel as bad after you eat it.
Nice.
But,
okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to look out for those. Yeah. I'll have to try to find one. That sounds pretty good.
Yeah. A nice $3.50 candy bar.
Nice. Premium, baby. I love it. That's awesome. What do you think is, what's a food you cannot eat no matter what?
I don't love eggs if they're by themselves. Like if someone's just an egg on its own, I think it's kind of gross. I don't know why, but like if there's avocado or hot sauce or something, and rice and beans or whatever, tortilla, I'm into it. But yeah, on its own, it's a no-go.
No eggs. All right. I got you. Who do you think's your favorite grappler of all time?
Marcelo.
Good choice.
Yeah.
How about favorite MMA fighter?
BJ Penn. I mean, for me, is like BJ, Fedor, and Habib, and Damian Maia. Those are all that's my Mount Rushmore. How many faces are on Mount Rushmore?
You got it. It was 4. Yeah, you got it.
Okay. Yeah.
So BJ Penn, Damian Maia, Khabib, and
Fedor.
Fedor.
Yeah.
Very, very good choices, man.
Yeah, I mean Royce, like obviously Royce has to have his own mountain or something.
Yeah.
He's the one.
Pioneer. Yeah, he kicked it all off, right? Yeah. What do you think is your biggest phobia?
I don't know, bugs or something. Rivers. I guess like I fly fish a lot, but I feel very comfortable in the ocean, you know, even when I'm scared and the waves are big and stuff, like I feel like, okay, I can figure it out, you know. I mean, obviously it has its limits, but yeah, I know, I feel like I kind of know where my limits are in the ocean. Yeah, rivers, like there's something creepy that freaks me out, like about like getting stuck on a log, and it looks totally benign, and yeah, you can drown there. You know, like the thing that kills people, you know, fly fishing or whatever in rivers sometimes is foot entrapment. It's like where you're, you know, like your toe gets stuck under a rock pointed downstream, and then the river knocks you over and you break your shin, and it's in water that's like just deeper than your arms are long. So like you have a broken shin and you can't quite like touch the ground. And I've been swept fly fishing, like wading. I've been swept like off my feet and swept downstream in a river a few times. And like, one time felt like very scary, you know? Yeah. And yeah, you're talking about like water that was like knee deep or something, but it was, you know, kind of pretty treacherous wading, and that there was a pretty high gradient. So the water was really moving. Yeah. And I remember just like, as soon as my feet were out from under me, I was like, I couldn't find you know, and I got flipped out of a drift boat one time where I wasn't wearing a life jacket like an idiot. And I got pinned on a rock underwater, and I was able to like kick off it and kind of come up, but I lost like 3 fly rods, and yeah, that was super sketchy too.
Yeah, that's what you just described about drowning or getting your foot stuck and drowning. That really is a very scary thing. And I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Gray with Liam Neeson, where he's fighting off those wolves.
I didn't see it, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
it's a good movie. There's a scene in there where a guy, same thing happens. He's literally like, it kind of shows him underwater. He's got this much space to where if he could just like literally lean like this, he'd have air, but he just couldn't get there. And it was, it's a gut wrenching scene, man.
The closest I had, like my closest like near death experience, from, you know, one of my activities was I was surfing a slab wave in Australia and, in southern New South Wales, and like I fell on one, and my leash got hooked under the like the table, like the because it's like it's a wave that like basically breaks like almost a dry reef, and it's like a perfect, you know, thick barreling wave, but like if you fall, you're going to get like washed up basically over the shelf. Yeah. And my leash got hooked somehow on the reef when I fell, and I was like being held on my back in maybe 2 feet of water, but there was so much water and those sets were coming in, and like I could see the surface of the water like 3-4 inches from my face, and I couldn't get a breath, and I was getting pushed, so my body was so extended that I couldn't get to the leash. And so I was like, oh, I'm like, this is it, you know, like that was the only time I've really had to like, this is it, talk with myself. And then I was lucky the wave was so powerful that the next couple waves, they just stretched the leash. And so it just kept me still attached, like pulling my leg, but it just blasted me up and up on the rock until like my face was like just coming out of the water. So in between waves, I could get like a breath, or in between the whitewater and the surge. And then like I was there for like a minute, and then I was able to kind of like flip over to my belly and then like push myself backwards and get my leash taken off. It was terrifying.
That's so scary, man.
And it just felt like it happened forever, and it felt like so banal, like such a, like literally the surface of the water was like an inch from my face, you know, and I couldn't get my head up to breathe. It was very surreal kind of experience, you know?
Yeah, man. Yeah. Feeling like you're going to drown in water. That really is something, that was actually my scariest experience in life was, when my wife was pregnant with our daughter. We were here in Sao Paulo. There's a city called Ubatuba that you've probably heard of. It's like one of the surfing capitals of the world. It's like an hour from here. So we were there and on the beach, and we were just kind of chilling out in like knee deep water. Like we were at like hip level water, just kind of, you know, hanging out in the water, having fun. And we had this little boogie board thing. So we didn't realize it, but the way that the water was moving, we were slowly moving further and further to the left, like in one direction on the beach. Or like it seemed like we were staying in place, but we were actually being moved. From the way that we were facing the beach, the sun was in our face, so we couldn't really see the red danger sign that kind of lets you know, hey, there's like rip curls and stuff over here, so don't go there. And there's this lifeguard blowing a whistle, but I thought he was, there's like hundreds of people on the beach. I didn't think he was talking to us. All of a sudden my wife kind of falls over and she won't get up. And I'm like, babe, come on, get up. And we're both laughing. And then all of a sudden she's like, I can't. And I'm like, what do you mean? And then all of a sudden I can't touch the bottom either anymore. And I was like, oh shit. Like, dude, the whole floor, like we're like way above our head now in water. And then all of a sudden we start getting pulled out. And I go, oh fuck, man, we're in like a rip curl right now. So I had her, I took the strap of the boogie board and put it on her, and then just told her to like, basically, thank God I taught her how to do like a gable grip when I was teaching her some jiu-jitsu over the years. I said, gable grip this thing and hug it as hard as you can. If I fall off, do not let go of this board, just stay there, And all of a sudden I see this lifeguard running parallel on the shore, and he's looking at us and he's blowing the whistle. And so I waved to him like, yo, so dude, this guy was like a superhero. He jumps in, and he's swimming full speed, and he's talking just like you and I are talking right now. Like I'd never seen any conditioning like that in my life. He's like, oh, you guys are great. Just hang tight. I'm almost there. I'm about a minute away. Just relax, blah, blah, blah. And I remember even in the moment thinking, how is this guy talking like that? Like while he's like he's like Michael Phelps speed swimming towards us. And he finally gets to us and pulls us out. But dude, like there was a moment there where I was like, oh no, like I never had so much to lose in one moment, because it's my wife, she's pregnant. And then, we're getting pulled out into the sea. So, it's a scary one. That was definitely my scariest moment. And it's interesting. You mentioned yours was ocean related as well. So
I got rescued by a lifeguard in Brazil too.
Did you really? Yeah. Yeah. What happened? Yeah.
I was, there was a huge swell, and one of my friends, he's a pro big wave surfer in Brazil. And so we thought we would go, we thought there was this wave that we could body surf, because there was like nothing that was surfable. And it was kind of stormy. It was big. It was like probably at least 15 feet. And so we're like, well, we watched this wave for like an hour. We're like, that we could like be good training to swim under some big white waters. And, for him, I'm not a big wave surfer. And so like we put fins on and we swam out, and then we got out there. We realized like there was no entry point to the wave, because it was so sucked up and square that you couldn't even like, it wasn't even really body surfable. And then there was just so much water moving that we couldn't get in. And so we ended up like, it was embarrassing also because the lifeguards like knew who we were, so the lifeguards came down and they had to follow us in the like trucks for like over a mile, probably down the beach. And then we found a chance. We technically didn't need to get rescued, but like we had like a lifeguard escort, and then we were finally able to swim our way in. But neither one of us like even like got away with body surfing or anything. But yeah, it was like it was a big production. Like the whole thing was like we were in the water for within 5 minutes we knew like, okay, we have to go in. Like within 3 minutes, we as soon as we got to the lineup, we're like, this isn't doable. Like whatever, we need to go. Like we need to get in, and we couldn't get in. It was just like, and the waves are so short periods, so that like the interval, their waves are really close to each other and really big. We couldn't go the one direction because there's just like 20-foot waves slamming against a cliff. So there's only one direction we could go, where luckily the current was taking us that direction. But there was just no entry points. It was just these massive dumping closeout waves. And they're coming so fast, you didn't want to get recycled to get like stuck in that zone. It'd be really easy to drown. So, we were just trying to be like, we were just talking to each other, trying to stay calm. And then we had the lifeguards in on the beach. They were trying to get a jet ski, I think, because they were just in the trucks. And then finally we found like a little zone where it wasn't quite so crazy. And we just like swam in before it like sucked us down to the next impact zone. But yeah, it was like the workout for the week. I think we were both so,
I was gonna say,
so exhausted.
The rest of the week's just recovery.
By the time we came back, yeah, just like a lot. I mean, it's a good wake up call too, because like I always felt before that if I had swim fins and was body surfing, I'd be fine in like whatever size and like conditions. And I was like legitimately scared out there and didn't really know what to do. Like I was super lucky. I was like with the friend I was with who was, was a super experienced big wave toe surfer. Yeah. And then, he was the one who kind of kept things calm and kept it together and kind of got us, helped get us in.
Jeez, man. I'm glad that went okay. It's funny you mentioned the element of feeling embarrassment when you get saved by a lifeguard too. Like there is this weird thing where it's like, oh man, like you're getting dragged back into the thing. And I remember when we got pulled back on the beach, like there was like 100 people with cell phones filming us. So I'm just like, hey, like, I hope none of you have a major YouTube channel I'm about to be on right now,
I'm just embarrassed of how bad a surfer I am in general, for how long I've been doing it and how many good places I've got to surf,
Yeah,
I don't want anyone to get video of just me surfing normally.
Yeah, I know. It's like that's like the opposite of like a good highlight reel for surfing, right?
Oh, yeah.
What do you think is who's your favorite superhero?
I was never into superheroes. I don't really know. Yeah. Like, I don't know. Yeah. It's never like kind of on my radar as a kid.
How about a superpower? If you could have a superpower, what would you want to have?
Probably flying, I think. Flying or invisibility.
Who's a historical figure you would have liked to meet?
That's a good question too. I don't know. What's Jack Johnson, maybe the boxer?
That'd be a good one. Good answer, man. I like that. Final question for the Pummel Game, Paul. If a zombie apocalypse happens right now in Los Angeles, what's the first thing you do?
Try to drive out of Los Angeles. Like, yeah, I don't know. I just started going to, I'll go to the San Gabriel Mountains and hike or something. So like up there, I have a rooftop tent on my car, like every other dude in Los Angeles, it seems like. Yeah. But yeah, I'm pretty much ready to go. I just have a bag to throw in the car and yeah, girlfriend and dogs and yeah, go to the mountains.
And that was the final question for the Pummel Game. Congratulations. You win. I think you're a 3 or 4 time returning champion now, and you got your double underhooks.
Nice.
So, Paul, let me ask you, man. Oh, something I forgot to ask you about earlier. You were teaching in Cuba recently. What was that like?
Yeah, it was incredible. It was my second time. I went to Cuba when I was 17 or 18, I think. 17, 18. When I went in 97. So kind of towards the end of the special period in peacetime. And my dad I'd always wanted to go to Cuba. I saw like some surfer magazine when I was in high school of like waves in Cuba and stuff. I was like, yeah, sounds incredible. And I was still am really into like traveling and meeting new people and whatever. So like Cuba had been on my list, and then my dad had a translator who was Cuban for a paper he was presenting in Guatemala, and she said, we could stay with their family or whatever. So myself and my friend and my stepbrother, we all went kind of for the summer, and I was white belt or maybe just a blue belt at the time. Like maybe I just got my blue belt or still a white belt, and there was this academy that we'd drive past every day that had said JiuJitsu on it. And I tried to go there a couple of times. It was always closed. And I found out later that I'm sure that was like Japanese jiu-jitsu, or maybe someone that, Japanese jiu-jitsu that came through Russia or came from Japan as a cultural mission, or who knows? I really have no idea, but I did find out that Maeda spent time in Cuba before he went to Brazil. And so he taught, you know, from my understanding, he taught in Mexico and Cuba, and then like couldn't really, you know, like didn't see like a career there, a pathway. And then he ended up in Brazil teaching the Gracies and stuff and doing challenge matches there. But so, yeah, maybe there's some other jiu-jitsu in Cuba, but yeah, anyway, that was my, experience. I spent a summer there, the better part of a summer, and ended up just like spearfishing and hanging out, you know, meeting, you know, making friends and having a good time. And then, but I've been wanting to go back since then. And, you know, I just haven't had the opportunity. And my friend, Emil Carnavaro, he has a kind of like I guess like a media endeavor called Havana Social Club. And it's, you know, martial art focused. And there's a jiu-jitsu school. Like he lives in Cuba part-time, and there's a jiu-jitsu school there called Camino Jiu-Jitsu, or a group. And as far as I understand, they're kind of like, everyone there is like kind of a, you know, really high level athletes from the state system there but they're, you know, across the board. They're freestyle wrestling, Greco, judo, and boxing. I mean, those are as far as I know, the combat sports that, you know, because they're Olympic sports that really have resources and really have a ton of talent in Cuba, and have had a lot of development there, and they've had a lot of success. So it's athletes in those disciplines that are like kind of cross training jiu-jitsu, you know, because I think that the intention is to move to MMA, and just, you know, train jiu-jitsu to learn it. But so they invited me to teach there. So I went and taught for a week, and I would do one kind of long session a day. And yeah, just trying to, you know, make as much of an impact there as I could in terms of like sharing what I could. So we did, you know, some guard work, some seated guard, maybe I think we did a leg lock, some escapes. So some, you know, a lot of just answering questions, and just training. So a super fun room though, because everyone's like obviously like incredibly talented, super enthusiastic. It's like just a fun culture. People are super warm and funny and welcoming. So I had a great time. You know, I think it would be great to go spend more time down there, or to make a regular kind of thing, or to be able to help in another way. I mean, even with instructionals or like YouTube and stuff, it's like, like data is so expensive for people that they can't just like go watch a bunch of videos on YouTube. So it's still pretty inaccessible, but yeah, it would be cool to see them, you know, to see like a real jiu-jitsu scene, jiu-jitsu community develop in Cuba, because like they have all the potential for it, you know?
Yeah. Cuba has a very, very rich combat sports history and culture, man. They have amazing boxers, amazing wrestlers, amazing judoka.
Just watching that Cuban coaches teach too was also super cool. Like some of the games that they were using to warm up, you know, like for in the wrestling and Greco and stuff. It was really cool to see how they blend like intensity and playfulness and instruction, and it's informal in a way, but with a lot of discipline at the same time, you know.
Cuban culture is awesome too. They have amazing food, great music. I actually I box every week. I box on Fridays, and whenever we're training, my coach will say, "Hey, what do you want to hear?" I always say, "Man, you got to play Cuban music," because he started playing Cuban music when I was first starting, and it's like the best rhythm for boxing and for training. I really enjoy it. So I've really gotten into Cuban music since picking up boxing again, which has been cool. But
yeah, there's music everywhere, you know, like it's like, it's, wherever you go, like you go to someone's house for dinner and there's like, you hear music, throughout the day. Yeah. It's a great place.
Hopefully we'll see a big jiu-jitsu scene come out of there. That'd be really awesome. Man, Paul, let me pick your brain a little bit on some technical stuff here. I want to talk to you about the tripod pass. I think a lot of people new to tripod passing will probably agree that it can feel like you're putting yourself in a kind of a precarious position against someone who has a decent guard. They may feel susceptible to getting elevated with butterfly hooks before they understand the concepts that keep them safe from that. What do you think are some of the most important technical details to understand about not getting swept when you're first learning to use the tripod position? Because it seems to me that just being comfortable there would really be the first step, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, just remember, like, if we go back to task order, it's like, it's the same there. It's like, stay safe, number one, and stay on top, number two. So those are the first things to worry about. So you can, but there's different technical tricks, to stay on top based on if it's gi or no gi also. So I just did an instructional. The last instructional I did was, high tripod float passing. And it's really a version of like the whatever new meta, I guess, although, arguably, I don't think it's particularly new, but the idea of like camping, right? And spending long periods of time in people's guards in situations that are tactically to our advantage, where they're using much more energy than we are, right? And so to try to exploit the difference in work rate. And so, tripoding is a way of kind of over the top camping. And it just so happens that's been my, ever since I really like kind of found myself in jiu-jitsu, or like kind of found my game, as like from the first, I think it really for me happened around the time I moved to Brazil, but like probably the year before that. So 99, 2000, 2001. And that's how I passed the guard, like my knee was bad because I was still coming back from, all the stuff that happened with my knee in like 96, 97. So my right knee wasn't great. So like I had trouble knee cutting. I always found like, I did some Toriando passing, but it just didn't particularly like suit how I like to feel. If that makes sense. Like when I'm passing, like, and still kind of working on everything. And then I found like the tripod pass. I first got exposed to it by seeing BJ, or feeling, BJ do it. I used to get to train with him some, like when I was a blue belt, even when he was still brown belt. And then in Brazil with Marcio Feitosa, helped me a lot with the position. He's incredibly technical. And then even Gordo would use it. Gorginho, Gordo's brother, had really, really good over the top passing, like manipulating hooks, floating on hooks, getting people tired, finding opportunities there. And then, there was another athlete, Foquinha, who was great with it, he has a school in San Diego now, I believe, but he was a really top competitor through the colored belts. But he really excelled in kind of, in tripod passing. You'd see Roger use it as well. So those were kind of how who I was studying initially, like in the early 2000s. And then that just kind of became my method of guard passing, mostly in the gi. And I would use it a lot in no gi too, but I would try to link it more with body lock passing, because there's important connections between tripod passing and body lock passing. They're very similar. Like in tripod passing, you're projecting your weight into the shoulders more because you're higher up on the body. You're coming for more over the top, and your opponent has their back on the ground, right? So they're supine, whereas you need waist or lower back exposure for body lock passing to wrap your arms around their lower body. You can still apply a lot of the same leg work and the same tripod passing, but the weight distribution is different because you're projecting your weight more over the top. But so I was using it no gi a lot. I was using it as a way to kind of keep someone down for longer periods of time, to tire them out when I was training with the fighters at AKA with Dave Camarillo a lot. And then I was using it in my own competition for mostly gi jiu-jitsu. But there was a lot I didn't really understand, I would say, about applying the tripod position no gi until more recently, and like really specifically with like what Joseph Chen's done with the position, which we've worked together a number of times, like kind of going back and forth and sharing our takes on the tripod and kind of like problem solving some stuff with it. But his approach to putting it together no gi is just like, it's really slick, what he's doing with it. So I would like really suggest you study what he's doing without the gi. And there was just one or two things that he was doing for me that that I took that has really made it really successful for me without the gi too. But you're right. Number one is staying on top, and it's staying on top and keeping your opponent's two shoulders down. So the first games I like to play are just basically learning to float over your opponent, keep the two shoulders down. The big thing though with the gi is you have a grip on your opponent's leg near the knee line that allows you to control two things. It allows you to keep your opponent, to manage their drive leg or their base leg's connection to the mat. And you can do that by pulling the grip. And then it allows you to stay past the knee line by pushing the grip back down between your legs. So you can let the leg kind of be in this in-between zone where your opponent doesn't want it, and you can hold it there for long periods of time. And it allows you to really anchor it. It's a very hard grip to break. And from there, it connects to, the primary kind of 3 half guard passes the way I see them. But yeah, I mean, really, like if you could stay on top, you're going to find a way to pass. You're going to find a way to, especially your legs are unweighted relative to your opponent's legs. You just have such an advantageous position technically and tactically there in what you can do. So now, once you take the gi off, you don't have the ability to hold yourself in the position where you're past one knee for as long. And so what you have to do is keep the side of your underhook, you have to keep that knee chambered high, and you have to keep on a hip height. So that was that's what I took from Joseph. And I mean, interestingly enough, I played that position. I actually did it the same way, but I didn't understand why I was doing it in terms of like having the task order, like kind of like, understanding the why of the position mechanically, even though like whatever I had evolved to the same position, I was doing it to manage where the hook could go, but not managing like what the hooks could do, if that makes sense. And there's like a slight subtlety there, which is like he is using the position primary, like that stance or that approach of having is really floating the tripod position and keeping your leg on the side of your underhook, knee chambered to your elbow. I was keeping that primarily to prevent my opponent from kicking me out of the position and keeping their hook contained so they couldn't, take that out and go to half guard or create an X on that leg to shift me back. Joseph, from my understanding at least, he's using that position to prevent the forward shift. Like first and foremost, that's the primary reason why that leg comes up. And when you have that in your mind, that it prevents the forward shift and it allows you to go up instead of back, and not get your feet stuck in the mat, not to hide your weight from your opponent's extending shin push, then it changes the entire nature of the position, because everything else I was kind of doing, but I was like the mental model behind like the dividing line behind the position, I was somewhat just taking it from the people that I learned it from, which was like, keep their two shoulders on the mat, but you can't project your weight onto the shoulders if you're behind two knees. You only do that once you're past one knee. As soon as like there's two knees, so I would do that when I was past one knee. If one knee came in, I would let them shift me back. I would let their waist get exposed. I would drop to a body lock. So I would connect the passes like that. Or I would intentionally let the leg pop out and try to land in a half guard, either with either underhook, depending on the situation. But the meta was, if your hips are behind two knees, you don't project and forward. You don't put your head next to their head and try to put their shoulders on the mat. Your head position's lower. You're trying to control their waist. Once you're past one knee, now you can project to the shoulders, right? Now, like the way I see Joseph applying it is, you can't, as soon as you two knees in, you attach to the shoulders, you project your head forward, but keeping that leg off the mat allows you to change the direction of their energy when they push, and allows you to come up and float it rather than getting pushed back or getting your feet anchored to the floor and allowing your structure to get shifted backwards and your opponent to sit back up. So it's a really subtle thing. The other thing that I took from Joseph's, just in terms of solution, is on the first side of the leg you beat. So we're basically going like, this is without the gi. On the side that we're not underhooking, our arm is free, so we can push that knee down. When we do, we go from pushing that knee down to pummeling near side underhook and putting in like a butterfly hook on top of their thigh to keep that leg out of the equation. It does a lot of other things too, in terms of like giving directionality to their hips, creating a kind of a dark side or like an A side to pass behind their knees. It takes the power out of their hook and lets you split and blah, blah, blah. But, importantly, it just like separates their knee and elbow. And it allows you to maintain that position. And what I've been doing before was pushing that down and either monitoring the knee with my thigh when I make the near side underhook, or making like a hook behind their knee, like a Turk, to ride that leg and pull up, which I still do, but I was only doing that position as a fix for when I couldn't control the knee, as opposed to a primary pathway to navigate through the guard and kind of be safe in the process. So, I've been really inspired by seeing how Joseph like kind of approached the high tripod with really fresh eyes there. And so I'm happy to steal from him.
Something I've seen you emphasize with tripod passing is the importance of splitting the legs. Would you mind breaking that down for us? Why is splitting the legs such an important goal when using that style of passing?
I don't really think of that as a primary point, to be honest. I guess maybe more so with I'll staple to kind of start leg splitting more without the gi. I mean, sometimes in the gi, but my I'm not thinking so much about getting around the legs, to be honest. I'm thinking about like holding you down. So I'm still using it as first and foremost as a pin. It's just a pin from inside your own guard, and then like how the person responds to that will open up pathways to pass. But it's kind of first and foremost just a way to be stable and to spend time and put you on the clock, essentially on the bottom, and make you work. So I've always approached the position like that, and what's given me that freedom is the control over the base leg, or the control over the leg that's closest to the mat. Whatever leg's closest to the mat is always the leg that is going to be the primary tool for your opponent to gain height. So if I can control that leg, I can control, a variety of techniques or mechanisms that you can use to gain height, be it scissoring your legs or heisting your hip or driving forward over a bent leg, or pushing the mat to get elevation. So I can I can control that variable, and then I can explore, right? So basically I'm playing between the strength of your hook and the positioning of your knee, both in terms of distance from your shoulder and kind of like a longitude, I guess, of like where it is in relation to your center line, So it can allow you to be foldable, or it can allow me to get, above your knee and cage your leg in, so I can start to create elbow knee separation. So I think that, again, all those are kind of like splitting the legs is one way to advance past the initial pin and get like a more stable pin there that allows you to continue to work through the guard. I mean, again, myself, I like the high tripod because it allows me to apply body lock positions when my opponent's supine rather than seated. I like the high tripod for the tiring your opponent, the inefficiency. But mostly I like the tripod because it allows me to mount. And I always want to go to the mount. It's the single highest scoring exchange in jiu-jitsu and sport, right? Because you get 3 + 4 always. If you hold the mount long enough for the mount to be scored, you get the guard pass too. Okay. Or if you hold the guard pass long enough to be scored, you get the mount too, even if you're taken out of the position subsequently. And the reason I like the mount is, one, I think it's probably my best position. Like I've just spent a lot of time there. I always felt like the mount is like the truest sign of whether you are good at jiu-jitsu, on a deep level. Like if you understand jiu-jitsu, because it's everything's stripped down, and it's more about your depth and timing and refinement than your breadth of techniques and your kind of like attributes or whatever. So it's really it's simplified and refined, and it's an incredibly powerful position. It's also a hard position to get good at because it's in the family of pins where you have one knee caging your opponent's hips on each side, which makes your hips available to your opponent. So it's about like hiding and your hips relative to their hips, or mitigating the power of their hips, or mitigating the directionality of the force that they can produce by pushing the ground when they're there. And it's the easiest pathway to the back. I think unequivocally, it's the easiest way. It's the most reliable way. It's the safest way to get the back. I would always rather get the back from the mount than get the back from the turtle, because your opponent has less base. They're closer to the mat. I mean, they will end up turtled, but we're able to take away the problematic elements of attacking like a turtled opponent, where their all 4 limbs can push the ground to build height. When we're coming from the mount position, and that's happening kind of one, like very incremental as they build height there, and we're kind of already shadowing them with our back position throughout the process. So, mount to back is, I think, one of the most important transitions in jiu-jitsu, and one of the most important transitions from real fighting. Like even just, that whole matrix of connection between close guard, mount, and back, and all the different ways that those positions can connect, is where a lot of what makes jiu-jitsu effective lies is right there. So it's something I always focus a lot on, and it's something that I try to create jiu-jitsu that works across all the all the modalities of sport, self-defense, Valley Judo, gi, no gi, whatever. I want all paths to take me there, you know? So that was why I developed the position over the years.
Guys, if you're out there listening and you're interested in adding this style of passing to your game, Paul has an awesome instructional with us that he just released not long ago. It's part of his Zone Jiu-Jitsu series, which is a series of several different instructionals he's done with us. This one's called Tripod Float Passing. It's available right now at BJJFanatics.com. Paul, I'm about halfway through. I'm loving it so far, and I really encourage everyone listening to go check this one out. Paul, in closing, man, what are some of your major goals for 2024? You've got the school that you're trying to open up. Is there anything else on the horizon besides settling into LA and opening a school?
That's it. I have, try to stay healthy, try to get better at jiu-jitsu, become a better coach, become a better practitioner. I have a surf trip coming up to Salina Cruz, one of my favorite places to surf in Mexico. Haven't been for a while, so looking forward to that. And then, getting the school open is really the priority, and focusing on that. I've been, otherwise I'm going to keep, we're going to keep working on that. Hopefully I'll have an announcement soon, within the next few weeks, if everything goes well. And otherwise, I'm just, I'm training jiu-jitsu with the stunt team a few days a week. I'm doing my own training on top of that. I'm doing a lot of work in the pool, like with weights in the pool and breath holding, and the whole kind of XPT training. And I've been lucky that Laird Hamilton has been training me for the past couple of years with that, and more so since I've moved out here, obviously, because it's not like I have to travel across the country to go get in the pool, so I can be up there a few days a week, which has been just really incredible. The athletes that are working there, so I feel super blessed and for that relationship. And that's it. Yeah. Just day at a time, but hopefully I'll have a school open soon. So, we put all the stuff into daily practice.
That's incredible. Well, I can't wait to see your school open up, man. I know you're going to have great success out there, and obviously anyone out there that becomes your student is going to be in a very blessed position. So, I appreciate you sharing.
Yeah. And I should say too, that I'm also really excited for Marcelo's next project in Hawaii, and being in California. It's it's just a few hour flight to fly there. So I'm looking forward to being able to train more with my coach too.
Well, folks, unfortunately, we're fresh out of time. Paul, it's always a pleasure getting to pick your brain. You always bring such great concepts and information to the table. I always learn a lot when I get to sit and talk with you. So thanks for doing it again. You're welcome back anytime you'd like to come back in the future.
Right on. Thank you.
Absolutely. For anyone out there that wants to keep up with Paul, it's really easy to do so. He's only active really on one form of social media. It's Instagram. So make sure you guys are following him on Instagram. It's Paul Schreiner, JJ. You guys make sure you keep your eyes open for his school, hopefully opening this year in California. He'll have an announcement about that soon. If you can't make it to California, you can learn from Paul anywhere in the world here at BJJFanatics.com. We talked today about his newest addition to his Zone Jiu-Jitsu series. It's called Tripod Float Passing. If that's an aspect of your game that you're interested in improving upon, this is a great instructional to start with. If it's something you already feel confident with, Paul has tons of other instructionals with us within his Zone Jiu-Jitsu series and outside that series as well. So type his name into BJJFanatics.com and you'll see all the options pop up. And that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. I really appreciate you tuning in. Please stay tuned for the next episode of the BJJ Fanatics podcast.